93 got that beat.
What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. In every episode, we get the distinct pleasure and privilege to speak to a brother or sister that's doing exceptional work in every field of human endeavor. And today it is no different, because in that, and as they share what they're doing, God, we get to hear their God story, the ways in which God is at work in their lives, and the ways that God has been at work in their work. And I'm so grateful to have my sister, our sister, Efe Fruci, in the house. What's going on, sis?
I'm good, Lawrence. Thank you so much for having me. I'm good.
Y'all, we were chopping it up offline because I was just like, man, I already felt like she's my kindred spirit sister.
Love it. Love it.
Because of the amazing work that she does. And I try not to get too much into the big intros, and I let brothers and sisters introduce themselves to some degree. But the work that you're doing now, I think people have heard words thrown around over the past decade, imposter syndrome. I need to find my purpose. People navigating and actually having a welcome ear and heart towards therapy and mental awareness. And because of things that people have gone through, navigating illness through life, understanding the full potential of a child, but also their life, young women in the world, and their importance of it beyond the metrics. You have touched so many things, on top of the fact that you throw in there that you're a little scientist, on the side, you know what I mean? Like, you just, you're a little biomedical scientist on the side, and, speak a little something. You are an amazing woman of God who is really locked into, I think, a heartbeat of a time where people could pull up a phone and forget who they are. And so I will start there. But I actually really have to start here by saying, who is Efe Fruci?
Oh my gosh. She is, first of all, the daughter of God. Just a daughter of God. I say that so boldly because me and God, we have such a personal relationship, honestly. And a lot of people know this because when I was growing up, I told them, be like, you know what? If they ask me and say, who's your father? I'll be like, my father's God. He lives in heaven. And for a lot of kids and for a lot of non-believers, that just sounded psycho and weird because they would probably think you would call someone's name like, I don't know, Brian or whatever. But yeah, I'm a child of God, and I'm just his humble servant, someone who wants to be led by him, someone who asks him every day to show me, lead me, and just order my steps wherever he wants me to go, because this life isn't mine, is his. I'm just living it on this earth and just doing it as best as I can. So that's who I am. An image of God.
No, it's refreshing to hear, because even with your hand and his hand through your hands and so many things, you could say that differently, and it would obviously be equally as impactful. I want to kind of start, because I want to use every moment of this. Your life, there was, I think a lot of people could relate to a journey where they started off in life where things weren't the way they ought to be, or that they would have designed it. And so there was a number of things that you were navigating, physically, interpersonally in your home. Can you tell us a little bit more about just kind of this, growing up, you're just the dynamic and kind of just what was the dynamic of your home life early on in your life?
Of course. So early on, my memories, I would say, when I was born in Nigeria, and we were there for a number of years because my mom was a teacher and she was also a missionary. So at that point, I think my earliest memory probably started from about 3 years old, when I was always inquisitive and really asking my mom, like, where is dad? Where is dad? And this is, the physical father. And for a number of years, I would hear he's living abroad, he's in Belgium, he'll be coming soon. And when he does come, it was very odd because we never spent time together. He would just, the occasional gifts here and there, but not the attention that a child needs to spend more time with her father. So for me, I kind of actually started getting detached from him because, to be honest, my godfather was someone I would go to his house. He had kids already. So in a way, I felt like they were my brothers and sisters. And I didn't see anything wrong with that picture because when I scraped my knees, he was there with a plaster. When I won every single award at the kids singing contest, he was there, putting me in his shoulders and hailing and being so proud. You did it. You did it. Every celebration, he was there. That was the image that I saw of a father outside of my three older brothers, should I say. And it was just so bizarre. But by the time I turned 6, that was when a lot of the shift, like a lot of things shifted, should I say. And I became ill. That was when my first battle, not only as a child of a worship leader and a devoted servant to God, my mother, I felt like me as an individual, as a young child, I was now going through this chapter with God. And how am I going to go through this? Because from that moment of me feeling something was wrong, as a 6-year-old, I knew there was going to be a shift. And I was right, because from that point on, as a 6-year-old, I would end up spending almost 7 years plus of my life in a hospital bed, feeding, waiting for people, doctors, medication, incubation tubes, feeding tubes to help me breathe, eat, live, grow, live life. So that was my childhood, the early stages of my childhood, watching other people grow outside, play outside while I'm actually stuck indoors, trying to figure out how I can get out of this bed and go chase whatever it is that God has planned for me. So my childhood started out that way, and it was just the roller coasters of emotion. And at the age of 7 and 10, I came very close to death's door, but God and my mom knew that it wasn't my time. And having those 2 second chances in life, I think this is why every single birthday is extremely special to me, because I don't waste it. And I try to tell people, and sometimes I even forget. We all do, right? Because we're in the busk of the day. We're chasing after our dreams, chasing after our passion. And for a while, I did forget because I wanted the next thing, or I got too comfortable thinking this is where God wanted me to be. But again, you get that jut. And he reminds you and say, hey, we're only just getting started, because if you go through that, it's not for you to sit through it. It's for you to be able to show people my power, to show people my power.
I'm grateful for you sharing that. And I'm putting my mind in this place of, for a child, right? We're all children of God, no matter how old we are, but we say youthful, but no matter how young we remain, but however old we are, we're children of God. But just how jolting that could be for a child to run up against her own mortality so early. And then second, I always think about this dynamic when you hear of child stars. I've interviewed a few child stars, or you think about Michael Jackson and people where, as much as they were living, there was also the element of like there's a lot that they could not do in their childhood.
Absolutely.
And so you find yourself, one, running up against your mortality early, but then 2, the things that you believe, that God-given inquisitiveness, that exploration, that heart of a child, you're unable to really live that in the way you want to, because you were limited. It limited, at least physically, at that time. Obviously, I think an obvious question would be, or obvious bridge would be, this is why you with your nonprofit, with ODIHI, this is why you want to make sure that you're unlocking the potential, equip, educate, empower young women, right, around that, because I think systematically the view is that many women are prevented, that they're locked in the bed, so to speak, of that. Is that the connection that you've had to that piece of, like, I felt locked, like I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and so because of that, I want to offer this for young women?
Absolutely. Rob, I think that early memories were the foundation. That was when I started building together a dream that I didn't even know would become an actual reality in terms of like I would see all the puzzle of what I needed to do from my standpoint and let God do the rest. Until I was 18, everything kind of tied in together. Of course, being that young and feeling like there's so much that I wanted to do as a child, because I'm 34. I turned 34 this past March. And
birthday, my sister.
Thank you. I look at my life and there are some times where out of just being human, I look back and I say, oh, I actually miss being a child. I miss being a teenager because even when I was a teenager, I was again at home helping my mom with my sister. So there are phases of my life where I just couldn't ask the age that I was in, because I was mature and I was responsible and I had way too much that I had to get done and had to support my family with. But does that make me angry? Not anymore, because I've again had to spend some time in my late teens and early 20s with God to kind of get rid of that. So that way, when I grow into this woman, I'm not walking around resentful with my, looking at my family, or resentful of the world, or resentful towards God and saying, why would you do that to me? We've gone through that cycle. We've talked it out. We've shouted it out, but yeah. And it's like what you said with Michael Jackson and other kids like him that grows up feeling like there is a gap because they never got to do all the things that children are supposed to do. It does affect you in a way. But this is what I feel. I feel strongly that because I know God, I turned out more than okay. I turned out better than what I thought I would have turned out. That is for sure. Because there's been a lot of crazy turns that my life has taken. And I'm surprised that I'm still here sitting kind, compassionate, the most that I want to even give back. Because sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I just want to lay in my bed, be upset, hide from the world, and just be angry. But I am surprised and proud and grateful that God wouldn't allow me to stay there. That every day he pushes me to see silver linings, to see my joy, to see reasons that it is not just about you, Effie. You can make it about you for a second, but just think the bigger picture. Look at the end goal. It's not about you. Your life is not yours to just sit there and live lavishly and be rich and have all those things, but for you to create spaces for other people to know where they also belong. So that's what ODIHI is about. We're creating roadmaps for younger girls and women, especially Black girls and women, to see that there is multiple options available from them, starting from their education, tapping into their self-worth, their confidence, their self-esteem. On top of it, their own God-given potential. What does that look like to you? Not what it looks like to me when I look at you, but what do you already think? What are your self-validation that you tell yourself that you're going to become? Who's God told you you're going to be? So we try to incorporate all of that with everybody that we see, but most of all, just create spaces for them to know that, hey, you don't have to do this alone, because I know what doing this sort of thing alone could cost you. Here.
This is, it's so pure because of obviously the genesis of your experience and how it pours out into kind of what the nature of the mission of ODIHI and what you're doing. I can just imagine. I think when I take the temperature, and I think when people are hearing this and they understand the work you're doing, there are two things that jump out to me, especially regarding your work in the Times. One is around purpose, right? Purpose-driven life was a bestseller for a reason. Like, who am I? Why am I here? These two big questions that people sit with. But then there's another piece, which I think is so, I would say, like so specific, which is as a confidence coach. Confidence being that, it's just like, it seems like it's like one of those things, like you have oxygen, but you don't, like you take for granted the fact that you got oxygen, you got water, maybe have running lights and things, but confidence as a specific piece. I laugh a bit in the sense of like, there's like the Nigerian thing of like, it doesn't exist if you're not a doctor or lawyer, or like, like, how did you survive that? I know you survived like the surgeries and everything, but like, what about this? Like, did they, I know. So talk to me about, so I guess on one hand, talk to me about, was there a wrestle at all, even with everything that you've navigated and gone through around your work, right, in your home, even speaking to your mom, who was obviously a woman of God, faithful, and you're like, here's what I believe I should do. Was there even an argument at all? Was there any wrestling, right? And did you think you were tapping into this larger question around purpose?
No, not at all. I am one of those fortunate human being that have a mother that cares so deeply and want me to be my own woman and is right there behind me if I should stumble, if I should fall short, if I should be afraid, and if I should be unsure of the direction I should take next. She's there to offer her hands, to offer prayers, most especially, to fast with me, to catch me, and to encourage me, and to remind me most of all that, hey, you can do anything. Not in the cliche way. And even if it does sound cliche, she sounded it exactly like that because it was true. Every word that came out of her mouth was the truth. And when I was a child and I was 9 years old, I told her and said I wanted to be a gynecologist. I couldn't even spell gynecologist. Like, you know what? I'm going out there and I'm going to save everything. I'm going to buy my daughter this little, oh God, what they called, like it's the little patient sort of like a exercise thing that you actually like play around with and you try to move your organs around. The name just skipped me now, but she bought that and I was like the doctor. So I would have to put all the organs, the intestine, and if you put it in the wrong place, it just beeps out of nowhere. I loved it. You will think I just want millions or billions. I was excited. She knew what I wanted to be, so she encouraged every single aspect of it. Now, that changed a few months later after I found out, hey, gynecologists, all they do is wrapped up in paperwork. My fascination and joy is the baby aspect. So I asked my older brother. Exactly. I was like, that's the end. So I went to my brother Victor and I said, hey, so what else can I do where I still get to handle the baby, even though I know they don't mind? I just want to I just want to be more where the baby is because they're so joyful. Like that's where the fun is. And then he said, I don't know, go ask mom. So he came with me and I asked my mom. My mom was like, why don't you do it like a nurse and midwife? And I was like, oh, and what do they do? And then she just explained. So for me, that was just bang, tied into my head. So the moment when we moved to Belgium when I was 14 and left Nigeria, she told me that she was pregnant and my sister was going to be my birthday present as me turning 15. I was like, oh my God, this is my chance to become this midwife. I got to prepare. My sister's going to be my first patient. I'm going to take care of her and my mom and make sure that they are fine, they are well fed. Every appointment I was there. Lawrence. I was obsessed over her, but I was preparing myself for the future that I've envisioned as a young child. So every single decision I took was getting to that stage where I would go back into school and actually study nursing and midwifery. And then a few years later, after 10 years gap of being at home, being responsible again, missing my teenage years and supporting my mom with my sister upbringing, I went back and got my certification for that. So there is always purpose when we have a dream. If you have a support system, someone who believes as strongly more than you or equally as you, as long as you have that direction, as long as you have that focus, as long as you have that dedication and commitment to yourself to see it through, which I did, there was no stopping me. I didn't care if I got through it and it wasn't what I love. I just wanted to make sure that I owed it to myself to see it through.
You know, I think people take for granted that there's a lot of richness in that. I think people take for granted choices and the faith required for choices. You know, I think we're inundated by information, especially this is a greenfield conversation, of course, but we're inundated by information, and I think people get overwhelmed by choices. It's like people are going to, you know, in the United States, they have, you know, Cheesecake Factory, you know, and the menu just has like 50,000 things, you know what I mean? But I think people are overwhelmed, and sometimes I think some of the wrestle with people finding their purpose is because they could do so many things. Like I could do this, I could do this, but there's something, you know, genuine around the fact that you chose that, right? Even just like, watch, you got the certification and went to Oxford and did all this. I was just like, oh my gosh, like this woman's fly, you know. But also just like choosing something and just actually staying with it is something that we take for granted, right? To choose something, it requires faith. And you said, regardless of the outcome, I'm just choosing this. I'm giving time. I'm giving this, and it's genuine for me. That says a lot. And so I think the Genesis story of your relationship with God, I think is just right there in the valley. You know, 6 and 7 years old, you're experiencing that. But was it just there, or was it just amplified? Because you know, I've heard people as early as 4, you know, talk about, okay, I had an encounter. I really felt an encounter with God. And then obviously I matured, and then I got to deeper levels later. what, was that the first crescendo, and then there was just another moment in your life when God became like, okay, this is good news beyond a culture of Christianity that I was around?
Absolutely. So, for that period when I mentioned of being hospital bed bound, of course, that was like an indication of where my faith went from, like, it just fluctuated because, first of all, it was fine. I loved going to church. I was a kid. I just loved being around people and being in the church because there were other kids that were amazing. I got snacks and mommy was always there. So, time I was, get into a critical situation, that was when my faith was fluctuating because I was like, God, where are you? Like, I'm just a kid, I'm just a kid and I have dreams. My mom tells me I'm going to become all these things, but I want to be that person. I'm looking outside the window and wishing that I was one of all those children that we were playing together. When are you going to show up for me? Right? Mom says you're coming. I just want to know that you're coming. So at that point, when I came out of that, and because I remembered my mom, my mom was just there and the doctor was saying, I don't think we can do much. Mom was like, you got to keep going, keep pushing, keep giving her that air because she needs it. I know my daughter, she is fighting. So you can't tell me that this is the end. And when I came back, at that point, I remember just like staring into her eyes, like dead deep into her soul, and was like super grateful that the first person I saw was my mother's eyes, relieved, excited that her daughter was just like, her eyes were open and we were engaged and we were seeing each other. Of course, my faith at that point was just like, mediocre. Because I was there like, okay, God that loves me as a young child who's done nobody no harm. My family, my mom is working especially so hard to raise children, all four of us by herself. And I was like, you know what? I thought we were best friends. That's what I used to say. I thought we were best friends. You're supposed to be my dad. I tell people at school, you're supposed to be my dad. Why are you doing this? This is conversation I had with him when my mom was there, when I was alone. But by the time we got to Belgium, like I said, when I was 14, my faith was shaky. It wasn't as if I left God behind, but it was just very neutral where I'm like, okay, I'll talk to him when I feel like it. We're having a long distance relationship right now because I don't feel what he's telling me I'm going to be. I don't believe it right now, but a part of me also believes it. So I'm just stubborn. So I don't want to allow it to sink. So I just want to be angry and be in my feelings about it. So at that point, I was just there. So when my mom sat me down and told me about the news of my sister, and that's something I've been praying for since I was 9. And this was happening I found that at 14 and a half, I was like, oh my God, I blew up, Lawrence. The joy once more was like that toy that I had when I said I wanted to be a gynecologist, but this time it was amplified. It was like much better because I've never received a better gift in my life than an actual human being. Another sister, because of course I had 3 other brothers who thought putting my hair through picket fence was fun. I thought, this is my moment. Like God was finally hearing me and he was giving me something that would be mine, somebody that I can play with, grow with, form a relationship with, and it will be pure and honest. And that was where I came back and I was like, oh, he's been listening to me all along. He brought those trials and tribulations so that way I could see this moment in a different environment, in a different country, and I could be rejoicing in this joyful moment, a new life, a new birth in a chaotic situation. Because first of all, my parents' marriage was not perfect. At this point, they were almost trying to kill each other. He's trying to poison her so she can get rid of the baby. She's already miscarriage because they were twins. I'm just there like everything is a mess. But for me to find out there was going to be a baby, I didn't even care about the other nonsense that was happening. I was just like focused, oh my God, I can't wait to see her. So my faith at that point, I tell people, was literally resparked because I was like, get out of my way, world. God has just shown me that he is alive, that he's been listening, that he's been watching. He just wanted me to be patient. And I couldn't do that on my own. But luckily for me, I didn't give up on him because he wasn't going to give up on me. And look at how he's come through once more. Through one.
I love this because I always, there's the saying that nothing's wasted. I think a lot of times people, have this almost alienated view towards their childhood, right? There is kind of like the family of origin from a counseling perspective, right? You're kind of familiar with where in counseling, you talk about how that shapes you, right? But there's also a piece of like that also shapes you and it directs you. right? And so much
Yeah.
of that, even that moment, like do not despise the humble beginnings of, wow, I
Yes.
finally locked in. I prayed first in my faith. I prayed to God
Mm.
over time, in a time when it was in a valley, prayed, almost felt distant from it, and then God comes through. Look at those stories biblically about God still remaining faithful to that. Then on top of that, the
Mm.
genuineness of something that you desire around your work of your hands, and then seeing it affirmed in the reality of like, oh wow, I'm getting my first experience, so to speak, as a child. And then obviously years later after the gap, I'm able to similarly see God's faithfulness in what I'm able to do. I just don't want people to
Yeah.
kind of skip past that of your childhood being, oh, I just need to forget this. And or God may have been giving you been speaking to you the entire time of where he's calling you to serve others in that. And so I'm just saying that's so refreshing. I want to change. I want to kind of keep the gas, keep my foot on the gas here a bit around the times we're living in. You know, we talked about the
Mm.
self-time. When you talk about self-confidence, identity in a social media era, I don't demonize, one of those people. I'm not, oh, social media. No. But I can
Mm.
imagine for young women in this time where it's almost to some degrees like soft pornography, and there's just beyond just even just expression, but so many ways of being a good, beautiful, successful woman thrown
Yeah.
at you by a swipe. How has that informed how you structure the programs, and to what extent, how does your faith inform what elements you put in to kind of really help young women, young girls really navigate the world that we're living in?
I stick with
Mm.
the truth of God's word. And what I mean with that is my first encounter of social media was with MySpace, and it was brutal. I had put a video of me singing in our one-bedroom apartment in Belgium, in Brussels at the time. And someone just came to the comments and dragged me out, all because they thought I was disgusting and I was ugly for having a gap. They used the word monkey several times. Some of them even actually suggested that I go and find my missing tooth, that it might be somewhere on the streets. And it was just brutal, because for me it was about the music. That was what everybody was doing at that time. So I remember just closing the page, leaving the account, and I was like, right, I'm done. I don't have time for this. I don't want to be having to go through self-esteem issues when I'm in this place and I'm cool. I just looked at my sister and I was like, well, that's my purpose right there. And we ended up actually just going outside and playing. Don't get me wrong, it actually hurts. I was upset. But I always remember my mom says, she's like, people's words, they would only affect you if you give them power. If you listen to them and you actually based off who you are by validating your words, and those sort of negative words, she always says, it's not something you want to take to heart. Don't let it get into your heart. As soon as you hear it or you read it or your eye sees it, if it's not bringing you joy or edifying your soul, get rid of it fast. So I did that, and I found the one best thing in my life at that point, my sister. And we went outside and we played, and I was off social media. So by the time Bebo came, Facebook came, I was very hesitant, because I was like, I don't want to come back until I feel that I have healed from that scar.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because it was painful for me to feel like, okay, what's the difference if I'm leaving MySpace and I'm coming to Facebook or Bebo? What's going to be different? People will still hurt you. They will still say what they want to say. And I don't want to have someone have to make me feel like my gap is something I should be ashamed of. I've spent years being ashamed of it. It is what it is. I'm taking a positive influence of what it means in my Nigerian culture, that it means beauty. It means riches. And my name means riches. So I'm just hanging on to this bag of gold that God has given unto me. So I'm with my own affirmations and words that brings me joy by taking all of their nasty things that they are saying and they're spewing from left and right, and I'm turning it to gold for me. So that way, even if I don't believe it, eventually my heart will be resonated by those words, but they're coming out of my mouth, coming out of my own hands, writing it down to make me feel better. Not for their sake, but for my sake, so I can be 100% me. So now when I look at Instagram, I try to tell people and say, hey, you have to do what's best for you, because my sister is on there now, and she's soon to be 19. So I look alive through her eyes as a teenager. But for me, my experience off badly. So when I want to coach my girls and coach the women, that I'm working with, I try to tell them and say, whatever you see on my Instagram page is my truth. If I'm upset and I look that grumpy or I look no makeup on, I'm going to post it because that's my reality. I'm not going to put anything out there that doesn't represent my truth and me doing things the way I want to do it, because people are like, Effie, you need to post all these filters, all these things, because as a coach, you need to have like a brand and all these things. There were so many noises that I heard about people just telling me, you're going to lose followers, you're not going to gain followers. Listen, the followers will grow. They will be where they want to be. I've spent years trying to listen to them, and all I did was just get away from God. So in the end, I was like, if you use this platform, if you're not going to use it in a way that brings you joy, then you need to stop it. Because I have gone through that period of comparing myself, my successes, that even all the hard stuff that God brought me through, I was looking at them as mediocre. That was an insult, not even to me, but to God, because I was like, how dare you do that? Because you're seeing someone else's life online. But it's that projection, isn't it? Because our mind, I wasn't ready. So I left. Because I wanted to be ready once more again to make sure that my heart isn't being stirred in the wrong way. And I wasn't using Instagram in the wrong way to affect people. So I tell people, I post when I feel like it, because that message is not just only for myself. It's also for you to take what you need. But at the same time, it's also to encourage people that you have this platform. Share your faith if you believe in God. Tell somebody how He's actually walked you through those journeys, those difficult moments in your life when you can. Let them know. But at the same time, always make sure that your presence, what you're doing in this world, is leaving a positive impact in someone. And that's what I want to be known for. Because to this very day, my mama ain't got no Instagram. But for me, as a 34-year-old woman, every single person that has met my mom, that she has walked with, they just need to say her name, Margaret. Nothing but good things come from every single one of them. And for me, that is the legacy that I want to have. So when people think about my name and they see me on Instagram, what am I giving them that reminds them of God's promise in their life, that gets them closer to God, that reminds them of what God is taking them, that reminds them of how awesome they are. So for me, that's my mission, to use my platform to help people see, hey, this is my reality. It's not always pretty, but God is kind. There is purpose to this pain. There is purpose to anything you go through. So come into my page, take what you need, but I want to leave something impactful in people. And that's my goal each and every day. And if I'm not doing that, then I literally just don't post. I don't do anything with that page. I close it down. And I've done it multiple times, and I don't care, because I don't want to upset God in trying to do things my way or society's way. I want to do it God's way, because when it's done God's way, it is perfect.
Whew. It's a beautiful thing to hear, and there's so much wisdom in even just how arm's distance, right? There's a recognition of the power of the platform, but there's not a deep reliance upon it. And I think that's just a wisdom for the time, right? And I think that's why I asked even the question about how these programs, how are you preparing, educating, equipping, and empowering young women for these times? And I think there's something to be said about, just the reality of like, what is your intentions for it with everything that you do? Just like your life, life is not a given. So what are my intentions for my day? What are my intentions for my actions? And if I do that with God in mind and God's mission in mind, then all things will kind of come together. I'm just imagining brothers and sisters hearing this and seeing this and thinking about their children and thinking about their children, and just saying, as parents who want to bring their children up, obviously with a fear of God, but then also want to prepare them for the world. Sometimes there's the thinking that there's a perspective around the extreme of either shielding them as a way of protection or hyper exposure as a way of protection. It's like building the antibodies, so to speak, of saying, if the world is filled of quote unquote jerks, then if you take away all the jerks, then they won't be able to deal with the world, right? How do you how do you manage it from your faith? How do you navigate that reality where there's a group of when they're thinking about their children, how do we prepare them? Some people just like, I don't like this idea that you eliminate everything. This is not realistic. People have to deal with the bullying. People have to deal with that. And then versus the
Yeah.
extreme, like, how do you think about that given your programming?
To be honest with you, with ODIHI, we are very open. I keep the truth always at the center, like I said. We want to make sure that when our girls come on board, when they're in our membership, that they understand that we're going to go through the online networking process with them, like the networking process, either how you message people, either on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. I want to be as transparent as possible. And I am, because I tell them my experience when the occasion calls for it, how I've seen or how the internet or social media, Instagram has affected me. But at the same time, I don't encourage shielding people so much, because in the end, if you don't tell them the truth, they will find out from somebody else. Now, you got to think about this for a second. For me, as a person, I would rather people in my family, in my network that I trust, my confidant, my network, to tell me if there is something going on in the world that I should be aware of, rather than going outside to hear it from people that I don't know. And then that's where confusion comes in, right? Because then you're now thinking, whose words am I going to take? Because by the time that word comes back to you, they've already processed that external factors news. And they're probably putting it on a higher platter, and we're just there like, okay, now how do you now fix this story for them? So I tell them, be very careful when whatever you post online, just know that it is there for a long time, if not forever. Be cautious. If you don't want to share things that you think are very deep and personal, do not share them, because don't do it because of likes, because we're going to show you sympathy, but say it because you want to impact someone with that story. Again, be very cautious not to follow the trends or people that you consider role models. If they're asking you to post naked pictures on your page, for example, don't do the same thing that they're doing. Do what feels right to you. Now, at the same time, if you have your mentor, talk that over with your mentor, talk that over with your coach. And for those who don't have like a stable home, for example, that's where our mentor comes in and really kind of walk that process with them, right? And we guide them and make sure that they don't fall into the wrong hands. And for those who do have parents at home that can support them and really understand and direct them in a proper way, they can have this conversation. We encourage them to have this conversation with their parents, like what is working for them, what is causing them to low self-esteem, what are they seeing that is actually making them struggle with their identity and feel like they have to fit into this new society norm in order for their friends to see them as acceptable and like them or follow them and so on. These are the things I tell my sister, and she's smart. I don't need to tell her this, because sometimes I think I parent her too much, because it's just a reflex now. I've been doing it my whole life, and now I'm learning to now be her sister because she's 19. But I see how responsible she is online. If not, she's teaching me how to be attentive, how to even navigate Instagram. But we teach our girls the same way I want to teach myself. Just be vigilant. Not everything you see you have to take to heart. Not everything you see has to be acceptable. If you actually have a doubt, then question it. Deeper. Do your research, come and ask us questions, let us know, a coach, a mentor, someone that can help you. And of course, we also have psychotherapists, meditation coach, yoga instructors, Pilates instructors that we bring in every single few months to do a session of healing for our girls and for our women, because we want to make sure that even if there are things that you can't tell your parents at home because you don't have that tight-knit relationship, because not everybody do, but we're here. We're here to support you. And if it is something that is life and death, then we'll bring in the expert and make sure that you are well protected and you are well supported and you have the right people around you. Because social media is forever changing. I don't want to add to the problem. I want to be part of the solution. And that's what ODIHI is about. We don't have all the answers, but what we do have is an amazing team that are dedicated to seeing more Black girls and women, when they are online or offline, that they are thriving and they know who they are, under God's eyes, under their own eyes, and they know their identity and they have confidence to be able to chase after whatever it is that God has placed in their hearts. That's our job. That is my job, to lead a team to understand that this is our first rule of business. Because this legacy isn't mine alone. It's for all of us to take a place in ODIHI and create it and make it perfect for every girl, every woman that walks through the door.
And you're doing an exceptional job. And this,
Oh, thank you.
and I like the fact that we spent. I think the spirit just felt just like wanted to spend time on that because I think that's a big issue of our time.
Mm,
And so you can't prepare young women, young
no.
girls, without an awareness that their identity is going to be under attack, their sense of self, and obviously different tools at different times. It still was equally as heavy for you navigating this. I want
Yeah.
to ask one more thing as we kind of are coming to the tail end is, I think in view of these times, let's talk about just public health crises. Let's just put that in the category
Yeah.
where often
Hmm.
people's health have been compromised to the extent that they aren't able to do what they want to do. They don't have energy. I think it's a scary feeling to recognize when your body can't do what you want it to do. Or from a mental perspective, your body, you just don't want to leave the bed in the morning because you feel that cloud over you.
Mm.
So I'm very curious with the things that you have navigated throughout your life. What has God touch around your ideal rhythm with God to both give you for God to give you be your strength to get to do the things that you need to do and the energy it requires, even with the things that you have navigated. How does God energize you? Like specifically, what is your rhythm with God on a day-to-day basis that allows you to feel energized to kind of push through perhaps what physically may be difficult for you to do?
Yeah, you know what? It's honestly when I wake up every single morning, a lot of people ask me because they would say, how do you stay motivated? You're always so bubbly online and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, some days when you see me there, I'm on bubbly. When I'm not, you see it on my story and I talk about it so openly. Every morning, like I said, when I wake up, I am grateful. First of all, because hello, Effie, you just woke up. That's one of the things that I say to myself, right? You made it here, you're alive. Some people didn't even see it to this morning. You girl, you already know that, hey, look at your track record. Look at where you started from. So every day, I try to make sure that it is precious to me. And a friend of mine actually gave me this new Bible plan that I'm reading right now, and it's called Dangerous Prayers. And I believe it's the founder of YouVersion Bible that wrote that. And it's challenging me in even a new way to ask God like things like search me, use me, lead me. And these are prayers that we don't often pray about because we're praying like, oh God, please help me today to get through this work. I don't like it. Please today help me get through this meeting. Help me find more fundraising here, da da da. But it's like, oh, those would come. It's great that you're praying about it, but what about the actual thing that makes you connect to God, that pushes you again out of your comfort zone and into God's zone where he wants you to be? So when I think about how God strengthened me, I look at my family. Okay, I look at my family because I've been praying and praying for a number of years, almost 5 years, to see my mom because I wasn't allowed back in the US after an incident that they arrested me like I was a criminal and left me scarred for months, for years even. I wasn't allowed to see my mother or my sister. What did I do? I got on my knees and I've been praying for almost 5 years. And this February, God made it so that they would come here and live with us in Vancouver. And my sister has actually grown up 4 years more. My mom is now 63. So I'm there like, again, God, look at how you showed up. I just know that when it comes to my life, God doesn't play. And sometimes I'm going to pray and want something so badly. And I'll be asking him and say, God, give it to me, please, today. Make this so, make my business shine here today. No, he never does that because he thinks it's going to make me happy or it's going to be what actually transform everything. I have waited 10 years for my sister to arrive. I waited 5 years for my mom to be here. So when those things happen, and when I'm in those moments of waiting and praying and being patient and being obedient, I am reminded always of how God has come through before, and time again. That gives me strength. It doesn't make the battle easy, but it gives me strength because I know that he always shows up when it comes to me. He always shows up. All I just need to do is just have a conversation with him. Even in the busy schedule, I just need to have a conversation with him and my mood is boosted. Get my gospel music on, my classical music on, just have a conversation with God in front of the mirror while I'm walking, anywhere I go. That strengthens me. Because when I look at where he's brought me through and where I am right now, I can't tell you the feeling, Brother Lawrence, but I cannot describe the feeling. But all I say is I am grateful because these were I'm living in moments that as a young girl, as a teenager, even in my 20s, I was wishing for. I was wishing badly for this life. So you ask me, or you think about it for a second. If you get all of those things and you still see that God still has more for you, that he's only just giving you just a fragment of what he promised you, and you think this is it, but you know that there is more. Now, how do you think you're going to feel? Every day, you're going to want to work harder to make sure that that becomes a reality, because you already have someone who's fighting the biggest battle for you constantly every day. So my strength is in God. It's difficult at times, but every day I want to make sure that he understands when it's good, he's good. When it's bad for me, he understands, he knows it. And I pray through it, and I call people that I know to encourage me. And now that my mom is here, she just fills my soul right up, because again, God knew when I would need her, and he brought her right at the perfect time when, again, I'm going through a huge shift in my life. And he's just brought her into that puzzle to make everything else work. So that way I don't lose myself, that I'm not discouraged, but I'm reminded how faithful he is, how much I am a priority for him. As he watches the entire planet, I am still a priority for him. That makes me feel so strong, because of him, because of what we've been through together, because of our relationship and what we're still going to continue to go through together, I know that every day is going to get better. And with him by my side, I would never lose hope. I would never lose confidence. I would never lose courage. It's just going to keep on elevating, and elevating.
My sister, thank you. Thank you. I mean, giving the picture of from sun up to sundown, the element of how you welcome reminders of God's grace in your life, but that being instructive for other people, from the sound and gratitude of prayer through to the sounds of the music and that you hear, being reminded of a faithful God over time, in time, who exists outside of time, is such a beautiful story. My sister, where do people find you? How do people find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Efe Fruci. That's EFE Fruci. I'm also on LinkedIn. I use it a lot more than I do Instagram, but you can find me on both. And of course, my website, www.efefruci.com. And our non-for-profit is ODIHI, and that's ODIHI.com.
Y'all, on behalf of the brothers and sisters that hear this and see this, thank you for the same faithful God that you've seen in your life, for you being that faithful person in the world, to be faithful to the task, be faithful to the vision and mission, to build an amazing organization under the stewardship and sovereignty of God, ODIHI, to serve young women so that they would be unbounded in their curiosity, unbounded in their view of themselves, unbounded in their understanding of a stable identity throughout eternity. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do. We will support you and pray with and for you. And so we love you, sister. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me, Lawrence. I appreciate it in his way.
Already. Take care.